It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds.
I have a dream that all men are created equal.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
What's up, Doom Nation? Welcome back. You are listening to the Two Doom Men podcast. And as always, it's your hosts, Skaggs and the Captain. And we have two very special guests today. Skaggs, you want to introduce them?
Yes,
or
sir.
Mike, do you want to introduce the mics?
The mics, yes. The mics on the mics, yes. So good to have you back, Captain. The first solo episode last time. That was interesting. But we're joined today by the Fundamental Opposites podcast, Mike and Mike. At least a Twitter account that I found really interesting. And we started kind of interacting there. So wanted to have you guys on and pick your brain. And I thought, honestly, what better time to do it after the midterm elections? So we could kind of break down that and talk about it. So thank you guys for joining us. Why don't we actually start with, let's do what the Unfit Statesman does. Plug your show first. Tell everybody where you can be found right at the very beginning before everybody tunes us out in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. So Fundamental Opposites podcast. It is myself and Mike. We do mostly just political theory or religion discussion. So format wise, we usually either will grab a chapter or let's say a short article and go through it. Honestly, like we try to do line by line, read through everything and just discuss for both of us what are our perspectives on it. So myself, anarcho-capitalist, I kind of loose on that, but I generally tend to say it for short form accuracy. And then my buddy here is, let's say in a lot of ways, my polar opposite, hence the name. And so we can be found on
short
Twitter.
Form. Yeah, I would say pro-life Democrat, but we were talking a little bit before the show. How you put a little asterisk there, maybe. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we disagree on stuff. That's the whole point of the podcast, is we're going to disagree on things. So
it's funny because we started this podcast as a Trump supporter and a Bernie bro, disagreeing on stuff, and everything's changed over the past 3 years.
That's why I found your guys' show so interesting, because the concept is kind of somewhat similar to our original concept, 3 years ago now. Obviously, things have changed. I now find myself also kind of being an anarcho-capitalist coming from a Bernie bro, which is almost exact opposite. But the past couple of years changed my perspective on things. COVID, the whole COVID regime, definitely. And getting into like libertarian ideology and theory and books and things like that changed me. So that's why I found your guys' show very interesting. And then we started interacting on Twitter and things like that. And you guys have post a lot of good takes. We've interacted on there before, so it was a good time to have you guys on. Who runs the Twitter account? I think
That's 100% me.
Right?
Yeah,
so that makes sense because we probably vibe in general because we have similar ideas, both being ANCAPs.
Yep. And I make sure in the account that I call that out because the views are a little spicy. I think for my co-hosts, let's say his audience generally, but it's Fundies podcast on Twitter. And I think it's the same thing on Instagram. I'll be honest, I don't use Instagram really. I'm trying to get up to using it. We currently only do audio, the audio podcast, but I'm going to start adding some shows in there. So Instagram will have stuff coming.
Very good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent tool until they start shadow banning you. So, but you guys might, all you gotta do is Mike's just got to toe the line a little bit, and you should be fucking safe as can be.
Yeah,
I'm not
maybe you
very
should
good
try
at
that. Just see how it works.
Yeah, let Mike run the Instagram account.
Yeah, just post pro Biden stuff. See how that goes. But I kind of feel you on that too. Like I kind of branched off from originally using the podcast Twitter account to just using my own under my own name, because I always thought that I'm like, well, Chris and I don't always have the same opinion. If I'm there posting under the show's thing, then people are going to think this is what the show's about. I'd rather just use my own name and like, this is my opinion. If you like it, you do. If you don't, I don't give a shit, whatever. So yeah, kind of similar.
Yeah, and pretty soon here, I'll be spinning up some solo content, and there's another anarchist that him and I wanted to try to do some stuff. So the account's going to get shifted a little bit, probably to being an aggregate of a few different shows. But that's right now it's just the two of us. And that show is going to continue because it's fun, and I don't even give a shit if people don't listen. It's just fun.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
We'll call that out. Like, yeah. So for all 7 of you listening right now, and
yeah,
as we say to the tens and the tens of people listening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have fun. Having fun is the most important part of doing a podcast, honestly.
That it is.
Yeah.
Again, a rant and rave, and we do so much different stuff because you guys got to feel it too. You get fatigue from constantly talking about politics, and just there is no good news. So we have shows like the Halloween special and the Christmas show, what the fucked up Fridays, the Funko episodes, the Popcast we call it. So we change it up. We do reviews sometimes, just gotta, you can't just stay on track for politics continuously, drive you nuts.
Yeah, man. So again, like our original concept was essentially, I was a Bernie bro, kind of more on the progressive Democrat side. Chris was the conservative Trump person. And like I said, my perspective has definitely changed over the years. So what made you guys decide to start a podcast, and how has your perspectives changed at all, if any, since you started? And let's actually start here. Yeah. What year did you start the podcast in?
Last year, actually. It's been... Okay. I don't know, Mike, if you remember. I think we started recording last October.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's either slightly more than a year or slightly less than a year. I can't remember for sure.
I think I started putting the podcast episodes up in November, and we did a few pre-records. I think that was how we staged it. So the idea, I kind of came up with the idea when I was first getting into sort of the social media, because I've not been perpetually online. This is a new thing for me. And so as I was starting to get more kind of into, let's say at least the libertarian minarchist sort of thing, I was starting to join Twitter, and then I'd had a Twitter account that I used for about 6 months. And I noticed that it seemed like a lot of the content out there was sort of just like libertarian circle jerking. And I didn't like, it was like, okay, I'd rather really have conversations with people that I enjoy disagreeing with. And so Mike and I actually know each other from college, a decade ago now?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were actually in the same fraternity, used to just basically disagree about shit all the time, and would just sit and talk about it. And so when I was thinking of the podcast, the first thing I did was like, all right, I got to shoot Mike a text and give him a call, say, hey, I want to do this. This is what the format's going to be. We'll come up with something. And that was sort of how it just spawned. It was kind of a brain fart on my end. And I was like, all right, how much is a Podbean account? All right, let's do it.
It's pretty crazy to see the similarities, because Skaggs and I are going 16 years strong. He's known me longer than he's known his wife. And funny enough, our other friends had a podcast, and we kind of had like this one large group, and we got into this argument about universal health care, and just everybody was like, that's the show right there. And it just grew from there, because we disagreed, but we were friends for so long that, like, back then, 3 years ago, in the media, or whenever Trump, from the second Trump announced his he was going to run for president, you had to disown all of your Republican friends. You had to disown all your Democrat friends. And the media was such a driving force in that we were like, no, you don't. We can still disagree and agree and move forward and be friends. And I think through that, and you guys might have seen it as well, not that we've solved a lot of problems, but like problem solving has like come about where you see from two different points of view what's really wrong with it all, you know?
Well, there's also been a lot of times where we both agree for very different reasons. Like we can come to the same conclusion and just be like, huh, yeah, I never would have figured that. Or another one that's I think pretty common is being able to actually explore the other person's side because there's no yelling involved. And so it's like, okay, I don't grant your first three premises at all, but if I did, everything else that follows totally lines up. So it's like, I can see why you think that. I just disagree way here at the beginning. And then, you know, it'll flip. It's like, yeah, well, if I granted your first few premises and it goes off this direction, of course, I'd be with you on that. So that happens actually quite a lot. And it's just been really, really cool to be like, oh yeah, I actually can have these disagreeing conversations more.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want an
Yeah.
example of that, go
ahead.
listen to the like 3 Sterner episodes that we did.
Okay.
That was just a constant barrage of, okay, I see
Disagreements.
where he's coming from. He's wrong, but if I grant his premise.
I think
See,
the
that's- go
exercise
ahead.
of doing a podcast or a long form conversation, I mean, is literally the complete opposite of how we most of the time communicate on text, especially, or on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever. Literally the complete opposite. You know,
Because
240 characters. If you were just to use me for an example and you looked at my Twitter, you probably think I'm like an angry person that's always looking to argue with people. I'm the complete opposite. And if you come on here with me, it's a good time. We're having a beer. We're like hashing things out. And part of the reason why my own perspective changed was by actually listening to Chris, see what he had to think about things, and you know, and be like, you know what, we don't really disagree as much as we originally thought we did. We only figured that out by having 150 something hour long plus conversations over the course of time. And we still don't agree on everything. I don't think Chris is an anarchist by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm more, I mean,
but
there's a lot of libertarian in me now.
Right.
So yeah, that was a big eye opening, you know, and it started off with me with the conspiracies, and, you know, you didn't buy them all, but then things just weren't adding up. And then you kind of saw behind the curtain of the corruption, and, you know, a few things, this doesn't add up. That can't be a coincidence. You learn a little bit. And then you brought upon libertarianism, and I got an education in that from several very well. I mean, Scott Horton, come on, you know what I mean? And it just changes your perspective. And I think this is such a better form to disagree on, because you go on Twitter and it's just like you say something and they're like, oh, look at this cis white male, he must be a Christian. You know what I mean? Like, and like, that's the end. Like, how are you disagreeing with me because of that? You know what I mean? Like, give me sustenance, talk to me. Let's talk.
So many people are such binary thinkers on Twitter. It's interesting being like a libertarian or an anarchist and jumping into a debate or a conversation and people just thinking you're a Trump person or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then if you mention the word anarchy or libertarianism, like their brains break. They don't know what to do or say, or it's just bizarre. I'm sure you've had
Go ahead. Reminds me of two things. One is a friend of mine said, if you wanted to design the worst possible platform for political discussion, how would it be different from Facebook or Twitter? And then the second one was a joke. I think Christopher Hitchens told this, that some guys in Ireland, and he gets mugged, and the guy asks, "Are you Catholic or Protestant?" And he's like, "Well, actually, I'm atheist." And so neither. And so the mugger pauses and goes, "Well, are you a Catholic atheist or a Protestant atheist?" So it's like that.
Yeah, it kind of is.
So Mike, Democrat Mike, I guess we'll call you. I don't know how. Can I use Mike A?
Mike with the
Mike G?
asterisk. How about that? Yeah.
Sure.
Asterisk.
Yeah, Mike A is fine.
All right, Mike A. So how, like, you're saying things have changed for you. Where was the turn that things changed? Like, were you still towing the line 2-3 years ago? Were you, did you really think Biden was going to save the world?
I mean, I didn't. Like
I'm not
Biden,
making fun of you.
Biden
I'm
does, no, it's not. I don't like
curious.
Biden as a vice president. So like I didn't like that he got the nomination. I'll start with that. Let's see. So what was the first part of your question? Because I totally missed it. Where, in what way have things changed?
Yeah, where did things start changing for you?
So I think that actually the biggest one was a quiz that other Mike sent me of different political axes. So there are 6 different ones, and because most of our political discussion has one axis that's like, you know, a bunch of ones merged together. And I think the big breakthrough was how this quiz defined progressive, which, you know, other people might have different definitions, but it was basically on the, you know, LGBT, more on the sexual side of things, and then the other end of the spectrum being I think what they called traditional, you know, I can't remember the terms, but I was like, oh, that's interesting that that's a different line. And then I realized as I was getting more politically involved also, so I've testified on a number of bills in the Colorado legislature, and realizing how much the Democratic Party is currently, like, the progressive side of things is the main issue. It's not as much on the economic or issues I cared about more. So like, okay, social safety net for the poor would have been one of my bigger ones. That's not, there's not a lot of bills about that like the conversation has shifted. And then I realized, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. I didn't notice that. And then I think the other big breakthrough was realizing that it's basically a moral crusade, but from people who don't think that they're on a moral crusade, which is a lot harder. Like I am morally absolutist. I know that. And so I know that there's also limits to what that means. Some of my opponents don't. And my opponents, I mean like people I've testified against in the House. So that was kind of what started it. Obviously, these conversations, the podcast conversations really helped with that. So like I'm still involved with Democrats for Life of America, which it's very much pro-life Democrat. Like that's what we do. But pro-life in this case being a very broad. So like when I testify on a disability bill, which I've done a few times, like that fits within the whole life perspective. So hopefully that gives you a rough idea. I'm sure there's follow-up questions from there.
Well, I kind of feel like basically the party that you got involved with started shifting away from you.
Correct.
Yeah, which is a lot of people's issue with the party.
Say, I think there's an interesting point in there. You know, you're concerned with policy and issues, and I guess you could say I'd probably go on a limb and say you were like a Medicare for all supporter or person, something like that.
As an option, but not as like everyone has to. But yes, okay. And like a big thing that Obamacare did was you couldn't get denied coverage because of pre-existing conditions. Like I need that.
Right.
It also did other things poorly, and I will fully acknowledge it. So I don't think at any point I was ever like, oh, let's give people a free pass. Another thing that other Mike and I have talked about, I was very critical of most of the things the Bush administration did. And then when Obama started doing a lot of them too, I was critical of him then. So it's like,
sure.
Yeah, I can't just be like, oh yeah, this is my guy and I should give him a free pass. Like, no, absolutely not.
That is so important, because when Trump does something stupid, I've defended him sometimes, but I've been right in line with Skaggs before saying, no, he's dead wrong. We were talking today. Right now, the guy has nothing else to talk about other than the election was stolen. I mean, it's getting mind numbing.
Or what I was asking about was his bizarre kind of like attacks on Ron DeSantis now. And I'm just like, why? I
gotta ask, how does, so based on the outcome of the elections today, I mean, I don't know if I fully buy in on this, but I've seen at least Cernovich's take of pretty much like, this is it, Trump's dead, MAGA's dead.
I've seen the take. Yeah,
I'm curious for your feelings on that, because at least looking at some of the key races where Trump backed, like a MAGA backed governor or representative, it didn't turn out very well for him. And the kind of, from my perspective, what it's looking like is basically a Trump backing mobilizes the Democrats more than anything else at this point. And to me, it's like, regardless of Trump himself, it does seem to me at this point that having him involved is not a good move for,
almost a net negative.
It seems like it's getting pretty close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the take.
Yeah.
You want me to go first, Cap, or you want to go first?
Let me, before I
Go
lose
ahead.
the thought,
Sure.
I don't disagree with you. This definitely was a hit to the MAGA crowd. But I mean, just about any source you get your information from, and I'm not saying you have bad sources, is going to put the MAGA crowd and Trump in a negative light. It's all they can do to do it. So I don't know if it's a negative, but you also can't think he's going to be, batting 1,000 across the board either. So he does have to lose some places. I think he was posting on Truth Social about him going like 215 or something like that. So there was, he did win more back at, more of the people he backed did win than lost.
Mm-hmm.
But
he had an interview where he said, anyone that I endorsed that wins, it's because of me. And any of them who lost, it's not my fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
That's
Trump
classic.
thing.
The idiots that, just puts his foot in his mouth. That's the shit that I can't be bothered with. But I still believe there is a large MAGA base. Just, then we got to start going through the weeds of, is everything legitimate? Why is it, Brazil can knock out an election in one day, and America over here with early voting and all this stuff, we're still trying to figure it out. We could nail Florida in an hour, but Arizona and, other states that have way less people, we really can't count them all for some reason. There's questions, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, but
67%. Arizona is still at 67% reporting.
Thank you.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
I think the whole narrative that's kind of taking shape, and it's coming from people like Cernovich and like the Matt Walsh and the Rufos, like those sort of conservative commentators or people. I think those people are squarely in DeSantis's camp. And I think to an extent, like the MAGA America First movement has almost kind of outgrown Trump to an extent. Not that people don't still love him and that he's not still popular, but perhaps Ron DeSantis has almost shown almost like a better version, a more nuanced, less reactive take on things. Like when Ron DeSantis gives a speech about critical race theory or something like that, I mean, the guy fucking understands what he's talking about, at least.
That's
when I watch
a
Trump,
fair assessment.
Right. When I watch Trump usually talk about one of these things, it's like I laugh because he's funny, but I get that he doesn't really fully understand the topic in on a deeper level, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I don't think people are, I don't think the MAGA America First people are as dumb as they're made out to be. I think they're actually pretty smart most of the time, and some of them have seen that. At the same time, I'm also weary of the anti-Trump derangement syndrome, right, where they want to spin a narrative now of that's it, it's over. It's etc.
People on Twitter are celebrating that the left has won, but they're probably going to lose the House, and the Senate is, almost tied. It makes it just, that's what brings me to the point of like, is the MAGA crowd still strong? Possibly, but we're never going to hear or find out the actual size of it.
Yeah, no, it's I can't remember. I think Dave Smith was the one that said it, but something to the effect of it speaks volumes that the progressives, the Democrats, are celebrating this as a blue win because the Republicans didn't win as much as they thought they would.
Yeah. I think Matt Walsh also tweeted that today, which I was telling Chris about before. He was like, man, he's like, the Democrats are pathetic. It's like they're celebrating a loss as a win, essentially. They just didn't. Right. They a win for them is the Republicans not winning as big as they thought they were going to.
Winning 100%.
Yeah. It's like you're celebrating a negative.
I also,
and it ain't over yet. And
it's not over now. I also always question the red wave. It was, there's questions to be had for the 2020 election, but just, I live in New York, and people are stupid as fuck over here. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to change, people's opinions. And there's a lot of just uneducated people. There's a lot of people that don't read past the headlines, and that's everywhere. So, I thought for a little bit Lee Zeldin was going to have a chance, but then, but New York shows up the way they do, and they love picking a good loser.
Yeah, I don't know how where are you guys located roughly? You don't have to tell us your exact address, but
so I'm in Michigan.
I'm in Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're both in actually I wanted to ask Mike, how satisfied are you with the election?
In general? Which
Mike
Mike?
A.
Okay.
Mike, yeah.
Okay,
sorry,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
This is one of the ballots I hated the most of all of the ones I've done.
I thought
Just like, I mean, there were a number of seats that I didn't vote for a person because I disliked both of them on very like fundamental grounds. So as far as like the ballot measures, one nice thing that Colorado does is they do send you a printout of all, like the full text of the ballot measures. Here's the summary, very nice ahead of time. But yeah, I did not like this election. I'll just say that going into it. And
yeah. I was going to say, other outside of Amendment E, which was the property tax exemption for surviving spouses of slain veterans, the rest of them sucked, basically. It's not good.
Was that just in Michigan or overall?
Oh, that was a Colorado one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a Colorado one.
So there was already a property tax exemption for if your spouse was disabled veteran, but not slain veteran. So I'm like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Of course, I'm going to vote on that one.
Yeah, I think there should be a property tax exemption for everyone and everything.
For property tax, for owning property.
That would be nice. Yeah, no, Michigan was an absolute shit show.
But did you kind of expect that though? What did you expect out of it?
Before yesterday, I probably would have said it was a toss-up. If you look at the reporting, particularly so Dearborn, which is right southeast Michigan near Detroit, heavy Muslim population. They were in the news pretty recently because of the typical shit in schools.
I saw those videos, right? The school board meetings, parents going and they were heavily outspoken, like the Muslim community in those schools against like this gender theory stuff going on in the schools.
Exactly. And so I thought maybe we'd see some mobilization, but Michigan, the GOP
dumb as rocks, just like New York.
Well, the GOP fucked themselves this year because Michigan, we had two major propositions, and then of course the governor race, the two big ones. So Prop 2 here in Michigan, basically extended mail-in voting, more or less gets rid of voter ID requirements. Elections can only be audited by election officials as appointed by the government. No private companies can come in and audit. So it basically got rid of a lot of election security protections. And then Prop 3 was pretty much an unabashed ban on abortion laws. Now they say, medical doctors can make a decision based on medical, but they included in the language health, including mental health, more or less. So basically, if you say, well, it would affect my mental health negatively to have this kid, then they can't say shit. So that was like the two big ones. So I myself and Mike are both pro-life. So I think to both of us, that was like would have been a nasty one. A lot of people voted against it, but more or less Whitmer ran on a platform of abortion, and so did the Republican candidate Tudor Dixon, and they mobilized the largest shift, like one of the largest shifts in young voter population that has happened in the state's history. Compared to the 2018 midterms, a 38% increase in 18 to 24 voter registration and a 55% increase in 18 to 19. So basically, and if you look at
Michigan
the vote count,
is scary.
and if you look at the voter count for Prop 3, Prop 2, and the governorship, so the governorship 2.4 million, and then for the ballot measures for Prop 2, you had 2.6 million, and for Prop 3, you had 2.4 million. So it's basically, did they vote Whitmer? Yes, then they voted Prop 2, Prop 3. Mm-hmm. So Republicans shot themselves in the foot by making the election about abortion instead of making it about the shitty economy.
Yeah.
Michigan's fucked.
Which is my fucking problem here in New York. Lee Zeldin was literally attacked on the campaign trail, and then somebody was killed outside of his house. And Hochul stands there and goes, crime is made up in New York. It's not real. And people are, "Oh, okay, there's no crime. I just got pushed into a subway, train, but I'll go vote for her."
I think the problem with New York ultimately was that people have become almost apathetic. Over the weekend we were actually, in the city. I was back in the Bronx, and I was at my dad's house, and I was sitting out on the front porch in the middle of the night, and it was interesting being back in the Bronx for the first time in a while. Things are pretty bad, and if you just sit out on a porch or on a stoop in the Bronx, you will hear it all night long. The sirens, the dirt bikes, gunshots. My cousin came home. I asked her about it. She's like, "Yeah, man." She's like, "Things have gotten really bad." So it's there, but I think people, for whatever reason, have gotten apathetic in New York State in general. There's like 20 million people in New York State. I forget exactly how many registered voters, but only about 5 million people voted out of, I think, maybe like 14, 15 million registered voters.
Insane.
Even in, let's use AOC's district, for example, where I'm originally from, AOC's district. There's 100,000 registered Republicans in that district in the Bronx and Queens. And I think 20,000 to 30,000 voted for Zeldin or for Tina Forte in that district. And 70 something thousand Democrats voted for, or people just voted for AOC. So, I mean, you could theoretically make the case if all 100,000 plus Republicans showed up and voted for Tina Forte, who was the opponent there, she would have won, right? She would have beat AOC in that race, but people become apathetic. I guess they think there's no chance, no hope in a place like New York to win. When, I mean, there really was. Zeldin didn't lose by much. So I hate that. I hate that.
There is though
nihilism of people that there's no hope.
There is the feeling in New York that if you're a Republican, your vote doesn't count. I mean, if only 5 million out of 15 million are going to show up, your vote, I mean, how much does your vote really fucking count? There's 8 million people in Manhattan. Manhattan could decide the entire state. Then if if only 5 million people show up.
New York City, where it essentially decides the entire state.
And you're never going to break the coastal elites. They're never going to turn tides until it's
just annoying. It's a low cost thing. That's what I was saying last week, to go vote. Like, it's 20 minutes. If it's once every 2 years, just even if it means nothing, even if they think it's rigged, even if they think it's a farce. As an anarchist, I don't think democracy is great, but you just go and do it because it doesn't really cost you anything. Like, I got to pay or anything to do it. So just give it a shot. So it's
pay more by not going.
I guess you could say there is a cost to it. That is just frustrating. I think the Michigan election was really interesting. I don't know, especially just with Whitmer's behavior during the COVID lockdown and regime. I mean, people just love their masters, I guess, and they love voting for them. And I can't believe it. It's really just shocking. She was one of the worst throughout
Michigan.
COVID.
Is it's a weird state. So, I've been here for, what is this? So this would be 22. So 12 years now. Went to college here, stayed, worked in the industry. I work a white collar job in Michigan. And the state is basically ran by the major populous centers, and those major populous centers are either the automotive industry or the colleges. So, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo have major colleges. You got Michigan State, Michigan, U of M, so, and then you got the entire automotive industry. I mean, go look into GM's relationship to the Biden administration, right? Ford put a vax mandate in. Stellantis is not that big, but they've got a pretty good foothold. You've got Toyota and Nissan have places here. Volkswagen's got a place up in one of the local cities. The automotive industry is everywhere, and the automotive industry is deep in with the investment banking industry. A lot of money coming from the the ESG held financials. They have very specific they have a lot of very specific social policies that they're going to push, and they've been hiring like crazy for the last few years, just importing, right? Your typical right out of college young liberals.
Yep.
And they vote for this stuff. I mean, I am it's funny. I was working with another guy for a long time actually, and ran across him finally in the buildings because everything's been remote for a few years. And I was shocked that he had a PragerU sticker on his laptop, because that's like fucking sacrilege in a white collar industry these days.
Yeah, that's a terrorist symbol. Yeah,
it's no surprise that Michigan went that way, because that's the kind of people that they've imported.
I think, I don't know, maybe you guys give your takes on this, but I think this midterms, because I don't know, I felt like there was going to be some sort of red wave. So the result is a little bit unexpected on my end. But I feel like maybe thinking about it now for a day and seeing kind of, and hearing what you have to say about Michigan, and seeing also what happened in Florida.
That was surprising.
Solidly
Yeah.
red, and seeing, DeSantis flip Miami-Dade County, the first time I think anybody's done something like that in 30 years in Miami-Dade County. I think there's an effect or aspect to this midterm election of people having moved since 2020.
Yes.
So people, let's say people from Michigan, some of them probably left and went to Florida, and those people are probably now more inclined to vote for DeSantis or red, and vice versa. Perhaps some of the liberals or the college students you were saying from Florida now went and worked in those industries in Michigan, and that is kind of like hyper intensified that. And what happened. Just so happened to be that way.
Drawing the lines of civil war, moving with your feet, voting with your feet.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny the fact that my wife and I have been discussing whether we're going to stick around after this.
Sorry to interrupt.
The Prop 2 is the one that I think would kill it for us.
I told everybody this morning, get out of New York while you still can. I mean, we need the compound up in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I mean, New Hampshire didn't do great either.
That's what I was about to say. That's what I was about to say.
I was shocked, although maybe I'm not shocked. It's one of those scenarios where the Republicans, at least in this, I think it was the Senate, ran just an awful candidate against the Republicans, ran an awful candidate against the Democrat, Don Bolduc, who's like a typical neocon, warmonger, old school Republican that's not an America first person by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
He's not going to inspire any turnout or whatever. And there was actually a really good candidate for the Libertarians in New Hampshire.
This is what stood out to me. And I know the New Hampshire Libertarians are gonna fucking hate me for saying this. Mark Victor dropped out of the race, brought up age of consent, did everything that the typical, pardon my French, autistic libertarian anarchist bullshit does. Got 2.2% in his race. Kaufman got 2%. And we're talking, this is normalized for population. By population, Mark Victor, who wasn't even in at the time, did better than Jeremy Kaufman. Not to say that the Free State Project isn't powerful and that it hasn't done a lot of great things, but that really struck me that there is probably some ground between the way that some of the old establishment libertarian wants to run things, which Mark Victor was a bit more, in the let's say politicking side of the old Libertarian Party, and then the hyper divisive, sort of message spreading, edgy New Hampshire Libertarian Party messaging. The numbers do show something very interesting, I think, when we actually look at them, that maybe both strategies are missing something, but it's not like we can just say this is successful, this isn't successful, and we got to throw it all away. That really surprised me. Looking at Michigan, Mary Busma, who was our gubernatorial candidate for the Libertarian Party, who had no charisma, barely ran a campaign, basically outside of the first 2 weeks, didn't even campaign, got 1%. And so if we're talking in the numbers of 1-2% outside of a very select few races like Georgia, the Herschel Walker situation, with Corey Chase
Oliver, I think his name
is Oliver. There we go.
Yeah, in that scenario, he essentially has caused the runoff. The Libertarian in Georgia caused the runoff, definitely, I would say.
But it's just, the numbers are still small, and despite the Free State Project's power, I was very surprised to see the numbers as what they were. So I don't know, to me, that kind of indicates that there might be a big enough libertarian bent in a handful of other states. It's not just New Hampshire that has the people there to really mobilize, because it looks to me like Arizona's got it too.
I wholeheartedly agree. Since getting the education on libertarianism, I think over the past several years, people are looking for a new option. That, you know, you might not like Trump, but you don't like being a progressive liberal. You know, these policies are so contrast. You're just looking for something new and something reasonable, and being left the fuck alone sounds awesome. Yeah.
Rand Paul, I shared it a couple times today.
Yeah.
Had a great tweet. And I think it's a lesson perhaps to be learned from the Trump people. And he said, every libertarian leaning Republican in Congress we feature often on Liberty Tree won their elections by double digits. And at least in my opinion, the best Republicans are like, he's not perfect, but, you know, Paul, Thomas Massey, who's essentially one of, you know, he almost is perfect in my opinion. He won easily. I think there's a lesson to be learned there. And there's been like this push lately from some conservatives, like the Steven Crowder type, and even like Alex Jones, like talking shit about libertarianism. I think Steven Crowder said that libertarianism is a preventative, not a curative. But I mean, like, this essentially just completely refutes that. The people who won, the Republicans who won easily, were the libertarian Republicans.
Yeah.
And we were talking before, kind of the old guard Republicans, or maybe even the MAGA ones, are the ones having kind of a hard time. So it's almost counter to what a Steven Crowder was even saying.
Yep. Completely
So
agree.
the interesting thing about Colorado politics is it seems like everyone has a libertarian streak. So Jared Polis, our incumbent governor, handled COVID more similar to how Republican governors did and to how libertarian governors did, because that's just this state. Also conservation. No one's going to say, I hate nature. That you're just not going to get elected here. So everyone says that. It's part of everyone's platform.
Yeah, it seems like Colorado has like a left lib sort of feeling to it.
I was always surprised that Colorado was left leaning, because I just feel like it's such an open, wide state. There's got to be so much hunting, and you know, you guys
things tend to lean to conservative, right?
Just the whole outdoors and nature, and it's not a constitutional carry state, right?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
But I know there's plenty of guns out there, that's for sure.
What was that, Mike?
I said the Crunchies got to live somewhere.
That's funny. Let me ask you guys, what did you think about what's going on in Arizona? I going into this midterm elections, I thought Arizona was kind of like the key, you know, place or election to see. I do like Carrie Lake and Blake Masters. There was Mark Victor and that whole scenario that occurred there. So I was a little bit personally invested in that, because kind of like the libertarian strategy at play, see how it affects things and works out. What do you think of the polling machine malfunction thing that's going on there? You know, Maricopa County, you know, Chris, we're talking, right? It's the same place, I believe, in 2020 that Trump was. I don't remember exactly what the issue was in 2020, but I remember the whole, you know, big lie or whatever you want to call it thing had something to do with Maricopa County.
You guys
could refresh
me
my memory, but
if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they wouldn't let the supervisors oversee the counting of ballots. They were boarding up the windows when they were counting the ballots. There was Dropbox issues. There was a lot that went on. I don't remember it exactly either.
So much happened in so many places. It's hard for me to remember what was where. Yeah, I'm not sure, Mike, how much you've heard about the Maricopa situation the last few days. So best I can kind of, let's say, how do I summarize? My takeaway from it is the narrative, let's say the official narrative is that the machines were not reading. I think they had one machine go fully down in the morning, and then they at one of the major polling locations, and they had another machine, I think, only reading either it was reading 25% errors or it was only reading it at 25% success. It was one or the other. But effectively, it was just, you know, the whole damn thing was going down. And And then it was the way that the election, to me, that what really stood out as bad was the way the election officials were handling it. More or less saying, well, if you don't want to use the machine, just give us your ballot.
Right. Put it
We'll count it later.
in box 3, I believe.
Yeah.
I was
put it in the
thinking about
box.
that comment, that comment that they made. I saw the video of that, and thinking back to that same morning of me casting my ballot. It's really just preposterous, because when you're given your ballot, at least in Connecticut, I get my ballot, I fill it out. There's no identifier in any way whatsoever that is mine or anything like that. It's essentially like a untraceable piece of paper. And if mine were to get counted or not, how would I have any proof that occurred if I just leave it on a box somewhere? Again, I don't even know if doing it the actual way and putting it into the machine actually does count or not, but at least I know, like, I physically had it in my hand and put it in there. I mean, to like myself, and it went into the machine. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. But to propose, just leave it in this thing and we'll do it later.
And trust us.
When it's a not verifiable thing to tie back to you in any way whatsoever. It's just I don't know. I just find that insane.
Top of all the issues that took place there in 2020, to forget if you're an election denier or not, there was issues in that area, in that county in 2020. And to be caught with your pants down on the morning of the midterms, I mean, can we get any more suspicious?
I don't think they had room for this to happen there. Like, if
they
leading up to this,
to go flawlessly.
Yeah, I agree. The Democrats are supposed to be trying to win the MAGA crowd's trust back in the election system, or just, I guess, right. And everything they said, everything that's happened, it's not like instilling any confidence in the system. I don't understand how. Again, I'm not a Trump election denier or anything like that, but I don't get it. Like, I don't understand how you're trying to instill confidence in the system. Everything you've said has done the complete opposite, and now this has occurred on top of that.
I don't think they are. I don't think they are trying to restore the sense of democracy, or the faith in democracy. In 2020, for a lot of people that kind of, let's say, on the political right or more on the libertarian bent, the faith in the system has disappeared entirely. I don't think that you can win that back.
I don't think they care. I mean, just seeing politicians, this is state level. This isn't even like on a federal level. Once you've become the enemy, you're the bad guys. I don't actually care what you think, because you are evil. They wouldn't use those words, but that's how they're acting. Like, here's all the shenanigans we can pull fully legally. Also, as an aside on the even if you had something that could trace, would you trust it? So the envelope in Colorado with mail-in, that's the trace one. So I'll get an email when it's in the mail, when it's been picked up in the mail, and when it's been counted. But if you don't trust the system, like, okay, yeah, the envelope showed up at the facility.
It's just an email.
Right. It is an email. Now I am more on the trust the system side of things, but I know that I'm in the minority here. I promised I was going somewhere, and I totally lost where it was. I think that was one of my main points, but it's gone.
I agree with Mike G that I don't think they're trying to regain our trust. I'm gonna take a page out of Skaggs' book. I think this is the new election psyop. The new normal is you're going to wait for the results. You're going to wait as long as we tell you. This is how elections go from now on. Because you could say January 6th was a result of the election. That's fine. But, we didn't burn any cities down. Nobody, they weren't stringing anybody up on, the Capitol lawn. So the repercussions of whatever took place in 2020 wasn't that severe. It was one bad day. So now here we are 2 years later, and there's a new normal. There's a new normal to everything, the new normal to your health, the new normal to vaccines, now the new normal to the election. And I think they're starting to program the sheep to believe this is how the elections are supposed to be done.
AOC did say in a tweet yesterday, the day before, that this is normal, that the ballots, won't be counted, or you won't know who won the same day. She did say that. No, it's not. It's not.
It
normal.
hasn't.
Right.
I don't
how many
remember
elections
that
have there
before
been
2020.
since before 2016? You know, going back 200 some odd years.
Yes,
You know,
many,
they all were
thousands.
decided,
Right.
decided that night, and now we have a new normal for it. That in itself is suspicious.
Yeah, I just find it so interesting. You know, again, being in Maricopa County in Arizona, same place I had problems last time. I've in my heart, I felt Carrie Lake was going to completely blow this one out of the water against Katie Hobbs, who didn't do anything, just essentially did what Biden did and stayed in the basement, hid, didn't show up to the debate, didn't poll well. Carrie Lake had energy, had a really good social media team, and at the moment, only 67% of the votes are in, but Carrie Lake is still down by a little bit less than 1%. She has made a comeback as more has came in, but I was expecting this to be a blowout. Similar, I didn't think Masters would have been a blowout. I thought he was going to win, but it'd be closer. But this has not gone the way I thought it did. I mean, the whole thing didn't, but
because
this one especially.
There's something about that county that the left cannot give up, you know, and it brings up so many questions. Like, it's, of all the places, first we have a problem with the machines. The media has completely hated Carrie Lake the entire time. You know, I mean, they've demonized her completely.
She's taking the combative Trump, you know, act or stance against them as well.
And she probably did blow her out, but we can't allow that to happen. So we got to wait a few days.
What do you guys think?
I would disagree with you a little bit on this because Mike and I were talking about this earlier. How do I say? I don't think at this point, and I know Mike had said something a little bit earlier to me that I think you said since like what Bush Kerry.
Bush, at least since every election I can remember. What was your original comment was a Democrat tactic of oppose rather than here's what we're for. And so Bush, Kerry, Obama, McCain, is very much like, we are opposing you. Like, here's these Bush policies we oppose. We're not going to do that. And that was the platform.
Right.
Yes. And that's exactly why I don't even know necessarily. Like, I think what's happened in Maricopa is fucking weird, but I saw it in Michigan. We've seen it, like I said, on the MAGA candidates that have ran in a lot of areas. It's where the media attention occurred. The Democrat response was severe to a degree that it didn't matter if, for fuck's sake, they elected Fetterman.
Yeah,
the dude is not mentally okay.
People sucked, man. But Pennsylvania was screwed regardless. But yeah, he's
Fetterman's not okay.
No, he's not.
Dude's legitimately a stroke victim.
Yeah,
like he needs to recover. Dude needs to take care of himself. His fucking family, his wife needs to be taking care of him. He needs to be at home resting, not bumbling through interviews. And they elected literally somebody that actually is having trouble speaking. They elected a guy that honestly, I don't think he knows where he fucking is in the White House half the time. They mobilized against Carrie Lake. Didn't give a shit if it was Katie Hobbs. You could have ran a turd sandwich.
Right.
We're in South Park right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's what the thing that the right is missing. And a lot of people are missing is they're seeing what's occurred. They're thinking of it from their frame. The conservative side has a tendency to struggle to think outside of their own frame of perspective. They vote for people because they want that policy. They want to mobilize for that reason. The left has a significant power to mobilize against an idea. They don't stand for shit anymore. At the current moment, is they stand against against this regime that they see fascism on the right. Yeah. And so it's very possible. Yeah, you're right, Katie Hobbs. There's nothing that she was a wet noodle. She had no personality, whatever. But Carrie Lake was was there. She's the MAGA candidate, so we have to oppose her.
I think what you're saying is definitely there's merit to it, and I think it kind of ties into my whole theory of like the psyop, the cult, right? Essentially, they've made this way to like condition people to believe whatever it is they're pointed at. Like they point them in a certain direction. That's the bad guy. Go and oppose. It all kind of ties into that. So it's interesting. I think they're definitely is something to that. And it's kind of like I was a little bit down this morning because I feel like, damn it, I thought perhaps enough people had gotten red pilled after the COVID regime and the economy and whatnot that people were just like, okay, especially at least in our own social circles, Cap. Like a lot more people I feel like are way more critical after COVID, just in general of everything. Perhaps we're in somewhat of an echo chamber in actual real life as well, perhaps. So that's why I was a little bit
with the same people at work every day. You're not out on the street. Yeah.
Damn it. There's more NPCs than I thought there are, I guess, in real life.
Yeah, I agree.
Mike, hey, what is your thoughts on this? I mean, you know, you still kind of are identifying as a Democrat. So what is your thought on that? On like the conditioning of people to just oppose rather than stand for something? You know, like we had this, like, you know, the progressive left is always supposed to have been kind of an anti-war movement. They don't even stand for that anymore. They caved within a day 2 weeks ago when they had a single anti-war thought when they wrote that letter. What's your thoughts on that? I want to get into your mind. Like, how do you still view yourself as a Democrat when they've changed so much? At least the word.
Well, I mean, it's primarily because I don't like the Republican Party.
Oh,
so
yeah,
like
neither do
it's
I.
like see exactly, this is exactly what we're talking about, is like it's an opposition to, I just hate negative political ads. So like I'm also bringing that in. It's like maybe we should have a law where if you say something untrue, the opposite just gets to air for free in your place on your dime. Like that would be great. Never would pass. But so I already didn't like that dynamic, and it was strong. Like everything goes straight to the trash. Like if it comes in the mail, I've got great filters on email and whatnot, but I still noticed it. Like if it can slip through still. So I think it's lazy, but it's effective. Like that's
playing to the lowest common denominator.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And like, can you imagine if we ran ads, like just normal ads that way? And so it's, you know, like the Ford ad is just about, you know, why Toyota sucks.
Chevy. Yeah.
You might have just
pretty
unlocked
much Ford Chevy ads.
A brand new revolutionary marketing strategy, perhaps. Yeah. You know, that is kind of exactly the race that Warnock and Herschel Walker ran against each other. Like there was zero positivity to anything that had to do with them. They was just slinging shit, you know, with trebuchets across the wall at each other. That's all it was.
Zero positive about them.
No, that is true. That is true. But it's just, it's bizarre.
Watching that on Twitter was pathetic.
I'm glad that it got spoiled for them, and they have to go into a runoff now, and everybody could panic. Good, fuck them both.
Yeah.
Well, so I was listening to, it wasn't even a podcast related to politics, but someone mentioned that what you optimize for is the optics of it, not outcomes. So it's like, bring me a problem. Problems I can do something with. Don't bring me a solution. You know, as a politician, what am I going to do with that? If I implement it and it doesn't work, then people are mad at me. But if I have a problem, I can mobilize people to overcome the problem. So I think that's just at play for sure. But like, then you can make the problem as the other person. So let's use it. It sounds great. Although, as you mentioned earlier, like the inflation could be the problem that you mobilize people against. So, and then another tangent, which my brain just does some of the time. Martin Luther King didn't give the "I have a plan" speech. No one would mobilize behind that.
Right.
I have a dream. Point. Yeah, you can do that.
Right. You need to give people hope, right? Like a message is essentially. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something the Libertarian Party is missing.
Their messaging. Don't even. I've told them
that's
to
your
their
biggest
face,
criticism of it.
What the fuck?
Are you talking about the new Libertarian Party messaging or the
historically?
Yeah, historically, it's just their marketing's garbage. The new marketing isn't bad, but it's also in your face. And the more brash, you know, the more aggressive you are, people are sensitive. Just in general, this is the weakest people have ever been. And if Trump's offending you, the shit the Libertarian Party is also going to offend you. And it's still just another shitty marketing ploy. I get they're trying to make a splash, but I don't know if they're really going about it 100% correct.
It's like I said, at the very beginning, one of the things that spawned the podcast was the fact that Liberty Twitter is one giant fucking circle jerk.
Yeah.
I
like a lot of guys in Liberty Twitter, but
I love him. I participate in it too. I think I told Jesse Kelly he sucks today, or Will Chamberlain he sucks today. I participate in the same stupid shit slinging, but and actually I was I talked to my wife about that because I had two totally opposite tweets. I did it on purpose. Will Chamberlain said something like, "How did we lose to Fetterman?" And I think I quote tweeted him and just said, "Because you suck." And then on the Michigan thing, it basically said an actual thoughtful analysis, right? That the Michigan GOP lost because they ran a whole campaign on abortion. It's not a winning issue right now. So you lost your fucking campaign. Good job, assholes. And I didn't, but the tweet itself was pretty calm. Got 3 likes on that one, and I got 8 on the Will Chamberlain shit. And it's it's reality is that the social media landscape, which is where most of the libertarian stuff is occurring, because it's very small communities. I mean, we're talking 2% in New Hampshire, right. 2% in Arizona. You don't run into a lot of libertarians, and so a lot of the interaction occurs online, and online culture is meme culture. So reality is, man, you're going to end up just messaging to a very specific subset of the audience. And I think that's something that they're it works very well if you're trying to recruit a specific subset. And I think they believe that there's enough people out there who want that out of politics. After the midterms, I'm a little shakier on whether I believe in that strategy or not.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. I guess you could say the Mises Caucus strategy of the shit posting. We now kind of have a case study or an example, and it didn't, I was expecting at least New Hampshire to do very well, Jeremy Kaufman to do very well. So this is, in a sense, at least a tiny fail in that strategy. It's maybe we do need to reassess or think about it. I don't know. It is interesting, definitely.
They need to get their shit together. I've said it.
Yeah, what does that mean, though? What does that mean, though?
They have to figure out.
So do the Republicans. So does everybody else in the country.
Right.
So does New York
the
State,
Republicans
New York City.
And the Democrats have a platform and a voice. There needs to be a working towards a platform where they're heard, where they have a following. They need a face. They need a leader. They need a Dave Smith to be out there causing trouble like Trump is, where Dave Smith becomes a household name. They don't have this big household name to follow.
I hadn't heard of him until today, so just there you go. I'm sure you've mentioned it before.
My father still thinks libertarians are liberals. He still thinks it's just a different name for Democrat. I mean, that there's not a big educational source for the party.
It's I think at this point, one of the things I know the Libertarian Party is planning to do. So I am semi-active in my state party, and I'm state mostly. I'm active within the Mises Caucus within my party. So I am involved with the Libertarians, and so I do see some of the stuff that they're doing, and right now I think their biggest thing that they need to do, and I know from what I've heard, this is the plan more or less, is to start focusing more on local level elections. Right. They recognize we can't win at the national level. We're not part of the duopoly. And I think that's smart. They continue to do that. It should work for them. So I know someone in our party, I believe is running for Secretary of State. I got 20% of the vote. Wow. As a libertarian. I actually did really good. And he said his entire campaign run was he talked to some friends and he changed his handle on Twitter to candidate for Secretary of State. It wasn't like he ran a huge thing. Chase, right? He said, I think his campaign was $10,000 and he spoiled the Georgia election. Mm-hmm. There is a strategy to be had there, but it's not the big sexy strategy that you get out of the typical stuff that the media focuses on. And frankly, if libertarians want to be effective, they need to get out and start talking to business owners. They need to start communicating with the people in the community and finding out what is it that they're hurting for. And then in a lot of cases, if it's, well, I need more money, start opening them up to different ways of thinking. It's not, I need more money, so I need a subsidy. It's I need more money. Stop taking all my fucking taxes. Like,
keep
because
all
that
your
takes
money,
me actually back to, it's interesting because you being a rehabilitated Bernie bro, I used to a long time ago be okay with the idea of a single payer healthcare system. I actually thought maybe, okay, whatever, maybe it's not perfect, but what we have right now is absolutely dog shit. And it was talking to a libertarian, who unfortunately now he's no longer a libertarian. He's more he's more of a Praxian, sort of more Hoppian side of things. But he sat me down and basically ran me through, well, do you know what Obamacare did? Do you know about how they set fixed profit percentages through reinvestment requirements and things like that? And actually ran me through, hey, here's how the government walked in and completely destroyed health insurance. And that was one of my turning point moments. It was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where I went, oh shit. So actually the problem is too much involvement. The problem is, because being in the kind of job that I have, I've seen plenty of times where people had a really nice idea and it works in theory, it sounds nice in theory, and then they implement it and then everything breaks. That's government. Except you have to convince a bunch of people to change it every time you screw something up, and it's got a whole bunch of bureaucracy on top of it. But the Libertarian Party, they need to get in there and they need to be talking to people and they need to teach and educate and discuss, and it can't happen at the national level. It has to happen at the local level.
Yeah, I think, definitely. Local is, that's kind of how I was turned on to it, by kind of like one-on-one, explain those ideas of, even around, single payer healthcare. We've been talking a little bit about that. I was a Bernie bro, so I was a big proponent of that. The pandemic really changed my mind just because of people's behavior and kind of seeing how people become around something like that. I used to think, hey, it's a great idea that the government should just run the health. This was our original argument, Chris, right?
Yep.
The government should, it's been proven to be cheaper, more cost effective, and let's say Canada or whatever. The government will just take care of everything, and you don't have to worry about it.
They can't be trusted.
But then a situation like the pandemic occurs, and you see human nature bleed through. If you don't do what we want, well, we shouldn't cover you. Your insurance shouldn't cover you.
You should go to jail.
Right, you should go to jail or whatever. Now, imagine if you gave those people the power over control of all the healthcare system. They'll put you on a death panel or something like that because you didn't do what they want, or you'll lose your insurance. So that really changed my perspective in a big way on that one issue, at least.
It's interesting that you brought up the sort of the one-on-one conversation as well, because Mike and I have had, actually, it's a constant theme that seems to be continually coming back when we talk about stuff, is, or like early on, we did a podcast. I think it was titled Personal Influence and something of the truth, because it was
the means of propagating the truth. It's an essay by Cardinal Newman, who is an English Catholic priest in 18 something.
Interesting.
Yeah. And one of the major themes that it kind of got through is, discussing how do we approach, specifically in this case, right, the means of propagating the truth, referring to the truth of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Religion is a pretty constant theme we come back to, because, right, I am we're not going to get into that, but it's like, suffice to say, easiest, right? I'm not a Catholic. I'm not Christian. Mike's a Catholic. So we talk about religion a lot, and it sort of started there, but we realized during the essay and talking about it that a lot of the points it's making is that effectively, to really get to a point where you can break down the walls and convince somebody of something, you have to have the one-on-one. You have to actually communicate. And it is that personal influence, the fact that they know you and that they trust you, that ultimately allows you to convince them of something that is not within their current worldview. Yeah. And that's absolutely so powerful, and people don't get it because a lot of modern politics is just lit drops and like signing flyers and shit.
If I can do the mic drop that leaves my opponents where they can't respond, then I win. One last thought. I'm gonna have to go eat dinner soon because I'm 2 hours behind you guys. So related to that personal influence, so Aristotle said that there's 3 ways that an argument can be effective, and generally you need all 3. It's the logic, the emotions, and then the person. If you don't trust the person, the other 2 can be spot on, and you'll ignore it. So
it's a problem with Trump. People don't like the person, so the logic gets thrown out the window. So you want to do some tweets of the week? Or?
Yeah, we'll wrap it up here in a few since you got to go. I mean, if you have to go, it's all right, no worries. But
yeah, I might just drop off if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries, bro. Thank you for joining us. It was interesting.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Mike, we do we'll wrap it up with this. We do a little segment called Tweets of the Week, and we'll just pick like random tweets that are either crazy, good, or just interesting.
Funny, outrageous, yeah.
Outrageous. Okay. It could be whatever. We just kind of spitball it. So let's start here, and I know what this one is. We're going to stick with a theme that we've been on lately, Chris. This is from Carnivore Aurelius. Damn, imagine being a hunter-gatherer, hunting just 3 hours a day, dancing around the fire, sleeping in nature, saying, ooh, sunning your genitals wherever, not knowing what the stars are, worshiping gods, no job, taxes, seed oils, traffic, microplastics, just vibes, he means. This is like a theme I've been seeing lately on Twitter. I don't know why these are like sticking out to me, or I'm starting to see these, but these people who just think like the Paleolithic era of hunter-gatherer humans was so easy. You just the deer, like I said a couple weeks ago, Chris, the deer, they just jumped into your fire pit
and cooked
themselves. Yeah, it's so easy. I'm actually going hunting tomorrow. It's not. It's very fucking hard, and it's this weird thing with people. They don't understand. They don't know where their food comes from. You ever play the Oregon Trail? I don't think so.
Yeah,
okay.
I have.
So you could just be traveling and your wife would die because she drank from a dirty puddle.
Right.
Your son could die because he was bit by a snake. These hunter-gatherers were up against tremendous odds. Taxes was the least of their worries. Being stalked by a pack of wolves was their concern of the day. You're not sunning your genitals wherever. You're looking over your shoulder. You need to find food 24/7. You need to find medicine. It's, oh my God, there's no depth to what they actually think, the Paleolithic age went through.
Well, there's something in there that gets at why we are in the state we are right now with respect to authoritarian governments. It's you got at it when you said the taxes were the least of their concerns. Yeah, exactly. We traded comfort progressively, slowly over time. We traded comfort for freedom. And it's a great question. What level of this are you willing to accept if it means you have to let somebody rule over you?
Yeah, that's a great point, right? I think the answer to that question is a lot. People will trade all of their freedom for comfort, maybe at this point. I just think hunting and doing outdoor stuff is great because it kind of gives you a little taste of how hard, real life is, or reality or nature is. And they will give you a good perspective then on, appreciating society and medicine and food and the supermarket and life in general.
And even just look at the tools that we have now. Look at your rifle, look at your compound bow, look at the layers that are in your hunting jacket and in your hunting hat. These people had a bow that was made out of a stick and a string, and they were using an old deer pelt to keep them warm. There was nothing, you think they had, Sub-Zero boots, the muck boots that we have?
Right. No. Right. They didn't have tree stands.
Yeah.
Right. That was part of my point. I'm like, I spent 8 hours up in a tree during the freezing cold winter months for 10 times a year. And if everything goes right, I get 1 to 2 deer. Like, you underestimate how hard it is to do that. That's with a tree stand, state-of-the-art compound bow, like I said, binoculars, all that stuff. So yeah, I think people should get more involved in nature, right? And see how it is. It'll give you a little bit more appreciation.
Or learn what a fucking farm does.
Yeah. All right, let's skip over. You got one, Cap. I used yours last week, so you got this one now.
This one, right before we got on, I've stayed off of social media. I've been extremely busy in my personal life, and just what was coming out of social media the past few days, mind-numbing. So, President Biden, we lost fewer seats in the House of Representatives than any Democratic president's first midterm election in the last 40 years. And we had the best midterms for governors since 1986. The American people spoke. Bro, you are losing the fucking House. How can you even present this garbage to us? You're gonna lose the House, and this is fuck, man. Come on.
This is
I'm
right before we started
speechless here.
recording. This is at 6:51 p.m.
Oh my God. I can't. What?
How
There's
can
no
you
fucking
are
way that's
losing
real.
the House, bro?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it's just straight up admitting it. Every Democrat president has lost the fucking House, but we didn't do it as bad.
Right.
Yeah, that's his
It's-
goal. We didn't do it as shitty as the rest.
It's literally exactly what the Democrats are doing right now. It's like the premise here, it's a negative premise, but spun as a positive. It's really
you know what this is really
people are gonna
setting up?
people. I'm sorry, man. We were talking about NBCs.
Yeah.
People are gonna gobble this shit up.
Oh, I know.
That's how-
78,000 likes.
That's exactly what I was going to say next, because you know what's going to happen now. This is it's setting up. They're acting like they're winning. So then when the House turns Republican, everybody's going to be shocked. And then anything that people don't like, well, we lost the House. It's all, gas will go back up. Oh, the Republicans took the House. You see what happens? It's all setting them up to surprise these NPCs.
Maybe. It's a good point. All right. I forget what I picked my last one as. Let's see.
It's Dash Dabrowski. It's got to be good.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. If Charles Manson hadn't been prosecuted for conspiracy to commit murder, he would have recruited more women, brainwashed them, and sent them to kill again. If Trump isn't prosecuted, he will recruit more followers, brainwash them, and send them to overthrow the government again.
Where do you how do you sit up at night, clenching your legs up against you, rocking back and forth? Just the mean orange man. He's gonna get us all. The mean orange man.
I'm gonna guess on the left, right? The irony.
Oh yeah.
The irony is that they're creating NPCs, brainwashing people, in a sense, controlling them.
Up is down, down is up.
Yeah, right. But he's
right.
over here saying that it's the other side doing it. Look, I don't like Trump, but it's just.
Well, it's Tim Pool, right? He's covered it God knows how many times where he said it, that there's a whole industry worth of journalists and personalities that made their entire career off of shitting on Trump.
Yeah.
How do you move on from that, where your entire content strategy was going after one dude?
You wait till next Monday and he announces he's going to run for president.
You're back in business.
Yeah. And CNN is going to be back on top, baby.
Yeah. We talk about them too much. The grifters, especially on Twitter, the Joe for Jers, the Brooklyn Dad. I mean, those people they're not authentic takes. No. They're
Speaking of grifters, what do you guys think of the Ben Shapiro going after Candace Owens on Twitter? Are you familiar with that whole thing?
She got fired, right? He fired her from.
Did he?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
He got fired yesterday on election day because I guess she's on the side of Kanye, I guess, in some aspect. I think when it comes to his faith and Israel and stuff like that, I think Ben Shapiro is extremely sensitive, and he becomes the worst of what he claims other people
fights against.
Yes, right. Something like that. Yeah.
He's a right-wing grifter.
I don't know if he's a grifter. I think it just when it comes to that one issue, which is his identity, he becomes that, or he's a snowflake when it comes to that. I mean, maybe
I'm just cynical.
Yeah, no, I am very cynical of him. Definitely. I mean, he does make good points sometimes. I think he's actually a pretty intelligent person. I listened to him a little bit on Lex Friedman. His podcast recently was talking about Kanye West, and I finished the whole thing. But there is, I find it bizarre when someone who seems to be so strongly rooted in critical thinking and just intelligent then has such a chink in their armor that doesn't make any sense. It is just weird. That's what he has.
That's how he was on COVID though too.
Yes, that's true.
He was
true.
Very pro-vaccine.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me. There's a handful of personalities. Maybe I should ignore everything Cernovich says because I think he was pro-vaccine too. I'll go back and retract my earliest comments.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Fair enough.
All right.
Any other thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm ready to go. You
Mike,
boys?
plug the show again. Definitely. Thank you for joining us. It was fun. It was interesting.
Yes, it was
Yeah,
great.
for sure. Thanks for having us. Yeah, so Fundamental Opposites, Fundies podcast on Twitter, potentially the same name on Instagram. Just go to the Twitter. There's a link tree. It's easier to get to everything.
Perfect.
We're on all the major RSS feeds, and eventually we'll be getting some stuff out video content wise, which I'm not going to go on YouTube. I'm not going down that cesspool. So probably just
don't blame you.
Rumble and Odyssey.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, Doom Nation, it's been another great, exciting episode. I hope you guys aren't too upset about the midterm results. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Adios.